the Hollow Crown. The storm raged over the Dragonspine peaks, its thunder echoing through the jagged cliffs like the roar of an ancient beast. Kalen Brightflame stood at the edge of a narrow mountain pass, his sword drawn and his eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere ahead, in the heart of the storm, lay their destination. Malidar, the Fortress of Chains. Behind him, the group trudged forward in grim silence. Theros Ironvein's heavy boots crunched against the gravel as he muttered dwarven curses under his breath. Seren Moonsong walked beside him, her silver hair plastered to her face by the rain, her hands gripping her staff tightly. Arendor Nightshade followed at a distance, his hood pulled low over his face to hide his expression. And then there was Lyra Absence, a gaping wound in their ranks that none dared to speak of. "We're close," Kalen said finally, sheathing his sword and turning to face the group. "If Valus has taken Lyra to Malidar, we need to move quickly." "And if she's already dead?" Theros asked bluntly. Kalen's jaw tightened. "She's not." The path to Malidar was treacherous. The fortress loomed ahead like a dagger driven into the heart of the mountains, its spires wrapped in chains that glowed faintly with an unnatural light. The air grew colder as they approached, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with dark energy. As they neared the gates, Seren stopped abruptly. "Wait," she said, raising her hand. "There's something wrong." Kalen turned to her, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" Seren closed her eyes and reached out with her senses. The air around them was thick with magic, old and malevolent. She could feel it pressing against her skin like a physical weight. "It's a ward," she said finally, "a powerful one." Arendor stepped forward, his violet eyes glowing faintly beneath his hood. "I can break it," he said quietly. Kalen hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Do it." Arendor raised his hands and began to chant, his voice low and melodic as he traced patterns in the air with his fingers. The ward flared brightly for a moment, before shattering into shards of light that dissolved into nothingness. The gates creaked open slowly, revealing a dark corridor lined with chains that seemed to writhe like living things. "Stay close," Kalen said as he stepped inside. The interior of Malidar was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and shadowy chambers. Chains hung from every surface, their links etched with runes that pulsed faintly in the darkness. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay. As they moved deeper into the fortress, they began to hear whispers, soft and insidious like voices carried on the wind. Kalen tried to ignore them, but they seemed to grow louder with each step. "Do you hear that?" Seren asked nervously. Theros nodded grimly. "Aye. It's like they're calling to us." "They are," Arendor said quietly. "This place is alive." The whispers grew louder as they entered a vast chamber at the heart of the fortress. At its center stood a massive throne made entirely of chains, its surface glinting faintly in the dim light. And there, seated upon it, was Valus the Hollow. Valus rose slowly from the throne as they entered, his gaunt form shrouded in shadows that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. In one hand he held Lyra by her throat, her small form limp and lifeless. "You're too late," Valus hissed, his voice echoing through the chamber like nails scraping against stone. Kalen drew his sword and stepped forward without hesitation. "Let her go." Valus laughed, a hollow, rasping sound that sent chills down their spines. "Why would I do that? She's already served her purpose." He tossed Lyra aside like a ragdoll, and Kalen rushed to her side as Seren knelt beside him to check for signs of life. "She's alive," Seren said softly, relief flooding her voice. But Kalen barely had time to process her words before Valus attacked. The battle was chaos. Valus moved with unnatural speed and strength, his shadowy tendrils lashing out at them like living weapons. Theros swung his warhammer with all his might but found himself outmatched by Valus's agility. Seren called upon divine light to drive back the darkness while Arendor unleashed a torrent of fire that illuminated the chamber in bursts of violet flame. But it was Kalen who struck the final blow, his sword slicing through Valus Vyas's chest as he roared in defiance. The cultist collapsed onto the throne of chains, his body dissolving into ash as he let out one final scream. She will rise. In the aftermath of the battle, they gathered around Lyra as she slowly regained consciousness. "Did we stop him?" she asked weakly. "For now," Kaelin replied grimly. But their victory was short-lived as Arendor approached the throne and reached out toward its surface, his hand trembling as he touched one of its chains. "What are you doing?" Kaelin demanded. Arendor turned to face them slowly, his violet eyes glowing brighter than ever before. "I'm finishing what we started," he said simply before vanishing in a burst of light, taking the throne with him. Will Kaelin and his companions uncover the truth behind the Dark Queen's prison and the mysterious Lady of Chains?